All right. I haven't done anything yet. What are you applauding for? So hi, everybody. Well, let's just do the business first. The code for today, for this session, is KMCTD 602. One more time, KMCTD 602. All right, let's get on with the show, shall we? Well, thanks everybody for coming and being part of this fireside chat with Kelly MacDonald, host of Kelly and Company on AMI Audio. I'm Andrew Morris. I'm the manager of commission content at AMI TV. Thrilled to be here. We today in this informal chat, we're going to talk to, well, obviously Kelly. We're going to talk about Kelly's career in broadcasting. So if you happen to be interested in a career in broadcasting or just want to hear about some of the sort of behind-the-scenes stories that's happened from Kelly's radio career to his television career and back to his new radio career, you're definitely in the right place. And we're going to take some questions throughout the presentation. So maybe every 10 or 15 minutes, I'll take a look out into the audience, and if you have something that you want to ask Kelly or me, just put up your hand and we'll call you out and pass a microphone around. Okay. So why don't we get started? Hi, Kelly.
Good day, Andrew. Good day, everybody. Everybody watching wherever you are.
Oh, that's right. We're being live streamed. How exciting is that?
I like it. Everybody out there, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for coming and tuning in to us in this room and out there.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Kelly, I've been, I don't know if you know this or not, but October 19th marked my 10-year anniversary at AMI, so that means that we have known each other for 10 years.
Seems longer.
Feels like 20, I know.
A lot longer.
We have, Kelly and I have a really good time at AMI. We play a lot of practical jokes on each other in the office.
Some would say too much.
Some would say too much. Kelly has been known to accidentally bump into me at the urinal, claiming that he can't see me. This happens all the time.
So make you feel nervous.
Yeah. So you always got to be careful around this guy. That's for sure. But we're not really here to talk about what we do in the bathroom together, are we?
Not yet.
No. But so let's go back. I think what people are really interested in is how you got started. Like, did you always know that you wanted to be in broadcasting, or when did this whole thing start?
So when I was about, I would think 9 or 10 years old, I always got really fascinated with the more silly things of broadcasting. I knew at 11 or 12, I didn't really want to do TV. I did a little thing for Rogers Cable 13 in London, teeing up music bands and stuff like that, and they would film that, and that really taught me, I don't want to do TV. It's too much work. It's too long. But I was very obsessed with really just what we would now call just DJing, right? It was that getting on and the next tune we're going to play is this one here. And just doing all that fun stuff. I would have been quite happy if I had landed a job doing 10 to 2 o'clock back in the days when they actually had live human beings doing most of those time slots on radio stations. I would have been quite happy working at a local station. As a teenager at the blind school at W.R. MacDonald School, I ran a little radio station with one of those Mr. microphones, which the one I had came from the States. It was illegal here in Canada because it was so small you could leave it somewhere as a bug. So they didn't sell them here, but Radio Shack in the U.S. did. So I had someone buy me one, and I did my little dormitory radio station. So for me, that's where a lot of that interest in playing music and having fun and going and broadcasting, recording the games that were out on the baseball games and hockey games at the rink at the school, that's what told me I want to do radio.
Cool. And so when you had this idea, when you say you had this idea at like 11, 12 years old, what was your first like foray into the industry? How did you move from just being passionate about something to actually going forward and doing something?
I used to horseback ride, and one of the sidewalkers at the Special Ability Riding Institute just outside of London that I went to was a guy who worked in the music library at one of the local radio stations. So I would go over there and learn everything I could. I'd go in the booths and talk to myself like I was doing a show and things like that. So at about 16, I got a hold of the coordinator for the broadcast course at Fanshawe, wanting to know what do I need to do to get into your course? What skills? Well, the moment I told them I was blind, well, radio's a very visual medium. I know it's radio, but it's very, very visual.
You do have a great face for radio, though, I will say that.
It should always be hidden away there. So that discouraged me. I actually allowed that to divert my aspirations at the time. And I went to college a year after taking a year off of school and started looking at maybe getting into social work and stuff like that, which again, as I started to experience the school life of that, knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. Fast forward ahead, I finally got myself, after a year of being put on the waiting list, actually 2 years of technically being on the waiting list for Fanshawe, I finally got in. And I went in with a bit of controversy because I had my submission delivered and it disappeared. And of course I felt, well, hold on, I came to sit down, talk to this coordinator and that again, who was very, well, I don't think we can handle a blind student here at this time. We're moving into a digital age, everything's changing, I have no clue how you would do this course. And funny enough, suddenly my submission disappeared. So the next year I applied again and went on the waiting list. And then finally spent 2 years at Fanshawe doing broadcast radio.
Fanshawe doing broadcast radio. So eventually you got in, but that's school, right?
It is, totally.
So how did you move from school? Well, first of all, I guess the part I really can't get past is that you did horseback riding.
Oh, it was great.
Sorry, but I just can't see that. That should have been a segment on one of our shows.
No, the horses would now say, would you please get off? I'll get on your back.
But at some point, you've got to move from school to an actual job. So
right.
Tell me about that period. And just give us where are we in the timeline? How old are you? And tell me about how that transition from school to job, or what happened in between there?
So I was mid to late 20s, and it was would have been
so 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
That was a joke, by the way.
Good man. So when I finished school, which was 98, I knew that, we had a great audience at the radio station at Fanshawe. I think at the time they were saying we cumed about 40,000 people listening in. And our profs used to like to tell us, you'll never get that many people listening to you in your life. And I'm sure most of us would agree. Where 33 students went through the course, we graduated 32 of us. So that's an important number to keep in mind, if you will, through the rest of the chat. I'll come back to that. So I took about 4 years of talking to different radio stations. I also had put my oar in the water at AMI, which was the National Broadcast Reading Service, or voice print then. The final year at Fanshawe was all digital, and at that time not at all accessible using any screen reader stuff at the time. So I ended up writing a makeup project about production, about accessibility for it. So that was the equivalent to my year in production. They knew I wasn't going to run out and get a production job, right? I didn't pose any threat letting me pass and taking jobs from other people who, I don't want to use the word legitimately pass, but who had gone through all the paces of taking a production course as part of their year 2 at Fanshawe or any other equivalent, institution. So I looked for a few years trying to get on air. I did a lot of audition tapes for myself, helped classmates of mine that I was in good with, and that with their audition reels, they would get jobs, I wouldn't. I then pestered at AMI, and I made a submission to the Human Resources Development Program, which at the time the government had this program where if you got a line on a job, they would assist and pay a portion of the salary that would be paid out to you to encourage a prospective employer at giving you a chance to get yourself a work record. I had a lot of program directors I would speak to, and they'd say, well, I'm only offering 2 shifts on a weekend at 6 hours each, 12 hours a week of work. You're willing to come all the way here to Oshawa, Kelly, from London, once a week, do this work? You'll use up all your money. And I expressed to them, but I need a work history. And as a disabled person, you don't understand how important that is for me going forward for that job down the road. Now, I will say, and I've said this very publicly, did I want to work for AMI at the time? No. I wanted to be somebody who stepped out, got himself a commercial broadcast job so that anyone else interested, it might be easier. We had Cliff Lormer out there doing it, and that wasn't enough of us. So I had hoped that. However, after 4 years, you start being, geez, I'll take whatever I can get. Again, I'll come back to the AMI gig, of course, as we talk. What happened for me was Steve Ray, at that time, owner of CJCS Radio in Stratford, who I had approached and the human resources development discussion happened, was interested in taking me on to do Saturday night shifts, which didn't exist as an on-air shift. He took me on to work overnight for a period of time. They paid me a portion. HRDC paid me the rest, paid for equipment that I needed, which was basically a Braille printer that sounded like a machine gun going off every time they printed my log sheets.
I remember those, actually.
Oh my gosh. So I started September, long weekend, Labor Day weekend, 2001. 3 days, no, that was a Saturday night. Tuesday morning, I started a new full-time job at AMI. So for a few months, I was doing AMI during the week and Stratford CJCS Radio on air during the weekends. And at AMI, I was doing production work. So at that time, we were a full-fledged reading service, so I was recording volunteer readers that were coming in at the time for people who may not know that portion of the history of AMI back in the day, AMI audio.
Cool, very cool. I'm going to take a question just after this, but you touched on something really interesting that I think that would be of great value to the folks in this room, and that is that you said you took advantage of the HRDC.
Oh yeah.
So, one of the things I wanted to ask you for the benefit of the folks in this room is if you look back at your history, what kinds of things did you, I don't want to say take advantage of, but capitalize on to further your own career? Because, a lot of people out there in broadcasting might see that you would be at a disadvantage because you can't see as well as everybody else. So what kinds of things did you do to take that initiative to give yourself a leg up?
At Fanshawe, we were lucky because members of the broadcast community made sure to keep their oar in the water with the students that were up and coming. They would come and speak to us. So I made sure to make friends with some of those program directors and tell them, I'll be hitting you up for a job when I'm done. And of course they went, yes, of course you will. So between finishing college and getting my first job, spoke to a lot of program directors. And of course, our conversations always start with, oh, hello, Kelly, nice to hear from you. I have nothing. And I said, no, I was just calling to say I observed. And I would, again, with the internet being so new, I was into listening to their stations. So I would usually have something I was calling about, question about, maybe something I should include in my audition reel, advice so they didn't feel so stressed, so hit upon all the time. Plus, I was just a guy who still was had that kid in him that wanted to be on radio and was just happy to talk radio with somebody. So on top of HRDC, I really took advantage of relationships, some that I had since I was 10 years old, when I was going to the radio station with the sidewalker from horseback riding, and anyone I had met through the process in broadcasting in London, while keeping in mind mentors are good. So I had a guy in Kitchener that was mentoring me at the time and just talking to me. And I remember one day I called him up and he said to me, I know it's tough, Kelly, you can get really disheartened, depressed. He said, the other day I was having a meeting with my program director doing an air check, and he was pointing out a few things, and it was kind of a downer air check, just things he had that he was critiquing. And I said, oh, really? Which, of course, made me feel good that, hey, man, this guy's been doing this for years, and this is what he's getting. The only part that I didn't like is when he said, I want to share something with you. And I said, oh, what? He said, well, when my downer air check was done, my program director said, you know what? Don't feel too bad, because you could be just starting out and you could sound like this. And he said, then he proceeded to play your air check tape. So it was just fluky. The program director had no idea that he was a mentor of mine. It was just one of those fluky things that happened. But I was and again, all those experiences you got to take away. And as much as I hung up and thought about that for days, felt very, down, but it helps build what goes forward, especially when you are told things, when you are critiqued. And when you do have to kind of say, that's a piece of information I need, that's something I can do with, that is personal preference. That is not really something I can do with. I have to be careful what I consider and how I let that affect me, but always being open at the same time.
Yeah. And I think it's important, and I do want to come back to you were saying that, it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows throughout your career.
Nope.
And I think it's important for people to hear that. They see you today, on TV, on radio, and you're like Kelly MacDonald, a celebrity, but it's not, it's a long road to get there. So let's talk about that in just a second. But just before that, does anyone have any questions just at this point that they want to ask either me or Kelly? You could just raise your hand and we'll come out to you with a microphone. And I can see there are nobody with... Oh, we have one question at the back.
It's okay, I'm loud enough.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, I am.
Great.
Hey, Kelly. Question for you regarding just kind of keep pushing to open those doors. The old story of how many times did you bang your head on the wall, and that perseverance, how did that really build you to who you are?
Okay, so let me just repeat the question just for our streaming folks because it doesn't have a microphone. How many times, like in terms of perseverance, did you like bang your head against the wall, and like what did it really take for you to make something happen? And interestingly, that was where we were going to go anyway. You said, you had a period of like 4 years where you really struggled. So maybe you could just talk about that.
So I took other jobs, and thank you, Andrew, for the question. I took other jobs doing, I did work for Arthur Murray Dance Studio, making phone calls. I did not teach dance, trust me. I worked for...
that would have been a great segment for a show.
That goes with the horseback riding, too. You're writing here. I see you're collecting. I also worked for a very, very brief time, ADT Alarm Systems, trying to sell alarms. So... that in that time, at least I had a couple of those pickups of things to divert my attention, not wanting to give up on the dream and my credentials. It was a matter of calling these people, but not over-calling, not making them avoid my call or not return a call. I would always say, it's nothing important. I'll call back later. Don't worry about it. Because I didn't want this barrage of messages. Kelly called again? And knowing, I have nothing for the guy. No need to call him back. Because they were just keeping me top of mind, keeping so that when something did come up, and usually these things come up where someone walks in, I'm leaving the station, I've got another job somewhere else, goodbye. My last day is Friday. I wanted them to say, that's the weekend guy. Oh, what's that guy? Kelly, let me give him a call. Here's a chance to give him an opportunity. I just hoped for that run program director out there that might view me. Obviously, I don't know what they're saying when they hang up from me on the phone. They might just be, all right, that should hold them for another month or two. I don't know what they were saying. All I could do is just keep sawing away at it. But it is very important, and mostly it's very important not to get depressed, which is much easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the question. Andrew, is that your name?
Yeah.
It's the best name in the room.
It's another one inconvenienced with that name.
Yeah, for sure. It never stops. It really doesn't. We have another question. Do you want me to come down with a microphone, or do you want to yell it out?
Hi, Kelly. It's Lisa.
Hey, Soph.
Hi. I was wondering how much, how you said about going forward to radio, Texas media, and having, how much confidence did it take to go from where, to get to where you are?
Sophia wants me to talk a little bit about confidence and how much it took. I don't think at the time I had any idea. I think it was more the passion for something I wanted. However, when I started to work at AMI, it was in a production capacity. When I was at Stratford, I was on the air knowing that was going to come to an end. And not because I was doing an on-air shift that didn't exist. These guys were just helping me get something to put on my resume, basically. And Eddie Matthews and Steve Ray were very good at supporting. And a funny thing about that, one of the selling points I gave them is, hey, I'm willing to be out there. Let's make this look like something. Hopefully, other broadcasters, selfishly, I was hoping would see me or other blind people and say, hey, I'll take a chance, or persons with disabilities. So the newspaper came in and did a news story on my experience there and how how I did the job. And from what I'm told for years, and it may still be, the newspaper item is still part of, I think it's the grade 8 equivalency test that they do in school, because I've had so many people walk up and say, I read this article about you and you're in Stratford. And I said, what article? I had forgotten totally about it. But once I started at AMI, I would still do some interview, or I started doing interview work. Now, remember, I went for broadcast radio, not journalism, so I had to kind of teach myself how to do interviews. Had no idea, really, other than what I liked and what I heard on radio. So on AMI Audio, we'd have guests come in, and I was tasked with doing some of the interviews because everybody knew, oh, he wants to be on radio, get him to do it. It wasn't part of my production job, but it was something I enjoyed doing as an extra piece. So when I had the I had, at that time, gave up on air, doing a radio show, DJing. Then I had an opportunity to be a coordinator at AMI, again, not on air, teaching people how to use the equipment to do their own self-teching and production for stuff we were putting online. So on that alone, I went from doing production, and as I told you last year at Fanshawe, oh, no problem, he can do a makeup because he won't be able to leave here and do production because it's not accessible. Well, 4.5 years later, it was accessible for me to do it. And first job, doing it. Second job, being a volunteer coordinator. I never went to school for any of that, but I had on-the-job training, and that credential added to the toolbox, which really gave me hope about things and feeling better. And fast forward to being asked to do TV for AMI, being the first full-time reporter for the network, and then on to Kelly and Company.
So in terms of like your confidence, did you find that you had to like fake it till you make it? Or when did you feel that you really needed that confidence as a skill?
I like things to be normacy and easy. Like I just like to be able to not worry, flow through. I found that I was constantly being challenged. Once I started really doing, well, first of all, I remember my manager coming to me, can you get this task done? I think I was a coordinator at the time, the volunteer coordinator position. And I said, oh, well, I think so. I'll work on, maybe, when do you have it done? Maybe, Monday. Will you just say? She said, why do you always do that? Do what? Why can't you just commit and say you're going to get it done? Well, in my head, because I don't want to let anyone down, I don't want to say I can do something, find a problem on the way to doing it, so I was very non-committal, and she said, just commit. Well, then I started to observe other people who would just say, I'll have it done Thursday, which actually meant Tuesday usually. And I realized it's okay, no one's going to come down. You said you'd have that job done by Friday, you're done. It was getting confidence through experiences like that. When I did TV, when I was on Blindsided, even doing AMI this week, we were constantly doing different things. And it had to get to a point where I had to stop worrying about, well, who's the next best person going to come in here and move me out and take over as reporter, as we started to bring other reporters on. And I stopped myself and said, well, hold on. All the hosts at like Sportsnet don't worry every time they hire a new host. Well, now that new guy's in here in Winnipeg, you're out the door here in Toronto. Right. It had, one thing had nothing to do with the other, but being blind, we're very used to feeling that in jeopardy, or that someone's going to come in and, oh, they'd prefer that person over me. It's a, I don't want to just say paranoia, but it's definitely a concern.
Yeah, for sure. It's a concern for a lot of people anyway.
But I don't think a lot of time in the disabled world, we have to realize that, well, a lot of people feel that way. That everyone feels that level of, well, they're indispensable.
Yeah. I want to talk about Blindsided in just a second, and we are going to roll a clip. I see we've lost our technician, who's also the conference organizer. Okay, so we'll cue it up in just 1 second here. But so just to go over your chronology up to this point. So you got this job at AMI. You were a volunteer coordinator. That's when we started to get to know each other.
Right.
And I think it's almost like unfair to compare any job in broadcasting to AMI, because AMI it's
very unique
and very flexible. AMI allows us to be very innovative when it comes to creating accessible content. We've done a lot of things that most other broadcasters don't do. And just to speak to that, there was one thing that Kelly and I did in those very early days. Do you remember we did the described video for the movie Fargo? We did that little
I was
test.
thinking about that the other day.
That was it was actually really interesting because someone had said to me, and I'd only been there for about 3 years. Blind people can't do described video because they can't see the screen to describe what's going on. And I said, to me, that was like, oh, well, we're going to find a way to do it. And and so our very first try at it, do you remember how we did it with the Braille script?
And some line feeding, because we started with the Braille and direction. Andrew would give me some direction, and we recorded it because the big challenge, of course, is a lot of describers, they watch the film, they then work with their script to fit what they're going to say into the spots.
Right.
So we had to do some adjusting on the fly and recorded it that way. And I was thinking about this yesterday at the inclusive media presentation that Margot and them were doing yesterday in here about hey, blind people could not only be part of listening, finding out, hey, is this working? Is this not? Is this good? We can also do description. We can also follow that script. I know people doing it.
Yeah, and just to give you guys an example of how that worked out, like it really was a combination of technology, innovation, and talent. Because where we started was I thought I could give Kelly a script in Braille, and he could just read it with his fingers and recite the dialogue, and we would edit it after. And it turned out that the microphones were picking up the finger noise across the Braille, so we actually couldn't use that.
No.
And so what we ended up doing was I would feed Kelly his lines through an earpiece, and Kelly would recite them like verbatim with exactly my inflection. So what I'm hearing back is Kelly's voice with my delivery. And it sounded amazing because we can all hear him. I don't have the prettiest broadcast voice, but I can inflect. And you did such a great job of that. And I remember sharing it with a couple of people, and they said, how did Kelly do described video? And well, we made accommodations, and we were motivated to do it, and we made it work.
I got in trouble. One of the guys came up to me who does the description. He said to me, hey, I said, yeah, how long you been doing DV?
Yeah.
I said, what? I don't do DV. I'm a coordinator. I said, you know that, George. He said, no, that's not what I heard a little while ago. That's not somebody who just is a coordinator. When have you been doing this stuff on the side? No one said a word. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I said, George, that was just an experiment. He said, well, you should do more of it. So
Yeah.
I always keep that in the back pocket. I think it would be a lot of fun to do DV. I even considered, geez, if they'd take me on doing that, I'd have definitely left the coordinator job at the time.
Yeah. That you might even consider that like your first sort of experiment of foray into television.
Putting the voice out there and doing TV for sure.
Yeah, and you're welcome, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
So let's talk about Blindsided, which was like the next big thing that you did. You had an opportunity to go from like volunteer coordination to
Television.
to television. And what I want to do, we ended up making this show. I don't know if anybody, just by show of hands, does anybody know? Just raise your hand if you know the show Blindsided with Kelly MacDonald. Kelly, can you help me count the?
I see a big zero.
Yeah, no, there's about 5 people.
About
So
five
this
or
is
so?
great
Okay.
because we brought a clip of that show. Can we run that? This is a quick little 3-minute clip of something fun that happened on Blindsided.
The Chang School of Continuing Education presents.
Hi, my name is Kevin Shaw. I am
That's
program
Kevin.
manager.
Kevin
for
wasn't on Blindsided.
Yeah, so that's not the show.
You guys had it earlier. Yeah, I know it
I'm
was.
Kelly MacDonald
There
for
you go.
Accessible Media, driving an old sedan on a racetrack north of.
All right, from the top. Well, we can keep going while while you cue that up. So Blindsided. This was really interesting how this came about. Do you remember how that show started?
Our VP of production, John Melville, back when when we first started the TV station, our president and CEO wanted to get cameras in every office and stuff like that. So they had different show ideas that we were throwing on the table. And John said one day to me and my videographer at the time, I want a segment that's Kelly's perspective. I want to try something. So he sent us out. He said, just go out and shoot something. So we said, oh. Okay, so we got in the company vehicle, drove about 5 minutes down the road, pulled off, got out, sat in a park and said, what are we doing? So we ended up going to the Dorset Tower, north of Toronto, and we shot a piece there. I still have people coming up to me on the street today that really loved that piece. It was visual. It gave us a chance to do some description with it, talking about that, and me learning about the fall colors. So it was amazing. It was really wonderful. This became a segment in one of the shows on AMI TV, and then it moved on to one of the other shows. And Andrew would say to me, you know, I know you got show ideas in your head. Why don't you ever come up with one? Like, you've got ideas. And I always used to hold out. I don't know. I don't really know. I wouldn't know how to make a pitch.
I didn't think you were actually going to do it. I was just being encouraging. You know?
Yeah. So I came back to him one day with 3 show ideas.
Yeah, thrilling.
Yeah. One of which we never put into any production at all. Blindsided was a half-hour version of what we were doing. And then the AMI Insides, which I think one of the last ones shot was actually at this conference last year. And it ran for about 4 years on the network as well. So we started with the concept of Blindsided, and myself, a freelance producer and a videographer, started to go out to shoot 13 episodes on a very limited budget. I'll let Andrew speak to whatever he wants to about that.
I won't.
Okay.
Why not?
Limited.
Why not? We shot that first episode, that first series for, I think it was somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000. It was like the cheapest TV show that was ever made. But when you've got talent that makes it jump off the page, it makes all the difference. And you had a lot of incredible guests on that show.
We did the first season.
For those that haven't seen the show, it's basically Kelly was the host of the show, and it was sort of like a satire of Kelly from a blind person's perspective, trying to make it in a world that's built for sighted people. And we built a lot of comedy around that because we felt that a lot of the stuff on AMI at that time was very, very serious and, intended to be service oriented. So let's have a little bit of fun, because Kelly can, if anybody can bring out the fun in it, Kelly probably could. So that show went for 3 seasons, but you started with some pretty amazing guests.
Yeah, we, on the first season, one of the components we had was sit-down conversations with people. So one of my favorite guys out there at Sports World is Stephen Brunt. We had also the writer, who's a really good friend of mine for Murdoch Mysteries, who actually created Murdoch Mysteries. She came on the show. We had Peter Mansbridge too that
Peter
season.
Mansbridge, you had Commander Hadfield.
Yes, oh my goodness, yeah. And I always do this, from Corner Gas, the dad, I always forget his name. Oh my good
Eric
heavens.
Peterson.
Eric Peterson, thank you. Just so many people that gave time to us, and that was a really fun part of doing the first season. It was scary. It was hard because, again, we'd go out, we'd try different things, and everything we tried had an element of fear. Like I was like, oh, geez, I'm not looking forward to getting up tomorrow and going to do that. But I think that was the excitement, and I began to realize that's okay. Just like I began to realize, because, you try something, and I think it was an episode where I was with Josh Trager of the Sam Roberts Band, and he was trying to teach me how to drum.
A disaster, by the way.
I have no musical ability whatsoever. People keep saying, you have a great voice, why don't you sing? Trust me, you don't want that.
That's a big no.
Oh, man, it's like a hard turn away.
I love you.
It's a hard turn away,
don't
man.
Sing,
Just won't do it. Yeah, exactly. Just don't sing and break his ears. So I had to realize, because somebody said to me, that looked like a lot of fun. And I said to them, yeah, it's always great embarrassing yourself on national TV. Everybody should get a chance to do that. I had to realize that was part of the fun of the show, and that was one of those moments where I had to tell myself, don't take yourself too serious, but have fun. But you know, I also looked at how many things I was pretty successful in and doing in the show and trying out, and really that was one of the blessings. And I realized I was very lucky to be able to have that opportunity. As much as I said earlier, I didn't want to be in TV. It's so contrived, so much time it takes to do anything. But I had a privilege that many others don't get to have, and I really wanted to embrace it as much as possible, even the failures in front of national TV.
Beautiful. And speaking of failures on national TV, I think we've got our clip ready to go.
I think we're just getting the volume turned up.
Getting the volume turned up? Okay, let's do it. Let's watch. Here's 3 minutes clip of Blindsided from season 1.
For accessible media, driving an old sedan on a racetrack north of Montreal. My navigator, the president and CEO of AMI, David Arrington. We're competing against other low vision and blind drivers. As the AMI race car number 27 rounds the corner, a sea of cars tail behind. David and I skillfully round another corner, leaving our competition in the dust. Hold on a second. I think I need to take a few steps back. How exactly did I get to be in a race car with the president of AMI?
He said, I need to talk to you. And I said, oh. So he came in the office and he asked me if I'd be his race partner. And I agreed too quickly, I think. To be honest with you, I just, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And then I went home and I spoke to my wife about it. She said, you're doing what?
Honestly, I just thought David would be a natural fit.
I think Dave would be a good communicator. That's what he has to do in running a communications company. So I'm looking forward to David being able to give me that direction, or otherwise we are in trouble.
See, he's in it to win and I'm in it to survive. That's awesome.
Although we might appear to be mostly confident in our approach, we can definitely be sure of one thing.
I think we're going to smash somebody. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's race day, and the nerves are settling in. I'm a little bit nervous, but what about David?
Well, I'm a little anxious because I've never done this before, but I'm a little bit nervous about, I hope it all goes well and we survive.
Once we saw the oval track, our strategy changed a bit. I think we mostly had it down pat.
We're still sticking with left, right.
Left. No. We're going left, straight, no right.
That's right, no right.
Don't go right.
Even
the
to go
wall
around
is
anyway.
right. You want to go left.
Confident now in our strategy, we were all set to go. I'm in the driver's seat, and David's in the passenger seat. After a bit of a delay, we're all revved up and can't wait to start the race.
All set.
The race is on. The cars slowly approach the starting line, and we're off. David sticks to the strategy.
Now you gotta go left, hard left. There you go. Good move, Kelly. We just passed right. We're in the infield now.
Oh, are we on the infield?
Yeah, okay, go left now. Left.
We make our way around the track a couple of times. Slow and steady wins the race, of course. But all of a sudden, we start getting a few taps from our competitors.
First time I got hit. Whoa, just got hit again. Left, right, left. Little left, straight. Little left, stop the car. Stop. We're good now. You're left, no, we're good. Go left.
Being rear-ended so hard shook us up a little bit. But we finished the race. And honestly, I don't think it could have gone any better.
I have to admit, it's a little stressful. My heart's racing a little bit right now, and I'm trying to catch my breath, but it was fun. It was a good experience, and Kelly was a good driver. We didn't hit anybody. We got hit, but we didn't hit anybody, right?
We may not have won the race, but we did meet David's goal.
I survived. That's all.
That was what Dave was. I wanted
survival
to compete.
was the
You bet.
yeah.
Hey.
Survival was the all-encompassing purpose of all this. Just get through it, but it was fun.
It was great.
For Accessible Media in Montreal, I'm Kelly MacDonald.
So here's some of your behind-the-scenes discussion. Before we started, I said to David while we had the delay, he said, I'm so nervous. I said, how do you think I feel? I said, you're the president CEO. And I said, nobody came through with any money or anything like that, so I guess you're surviving. But it was almost that stressor of that more than myself. I was ready to go out and just have fun. If we hit people, we hit people. Then, of course, the ego thing starts. I have not hit anyone. This car looks pretty good. So when we were done, I said to David, so now you call your wife so she can stop worrying. You call her. You tell her I was good. You were safe. It was a really great experience. Actually, I think that's an ATW piece. Am I this week? I think it is.
Oh, you might be right.
Yeah, I think so. I think we stole it. We'll claim it for Blindsided.
It's okay. We'll take it.
Did do a lot of driving with Blindside. One of the things I really enjoy doing, and I know many of you out there would say, geez, that'd be an amazing experience. And they do that in Quebec and New Brunswick and other places around where blind people get sighted navigators, and we get that opportunity. So AMI sponsored a couple of cars, and it was really special. I actually think we came in third, but we somehow heard, we were fourth.
I think that's what the Don Valley Parkway is like at around
All the
3
time.
o'clock. Yeah.
All those people who
bunch of
have
blind
sight
people
and have the
driving,
option of using it or not.
Yeah, sure. And that's without self-driving cars.
That's right.
This was Kelly at the wheel with the CE. Yeah. Anyway, I wouldn't have done it for twice my salary, but
He was
no
next on the
offense.
list to go to.
No offense.
Yeah.
So we've only got about 10 minutes left. I did want to talk to you about, some of the accommodations that they made for you on this set of Blindsided. But before we do that, why don't we just see if anybody has any questions up to this point? So I'm looking out in the audience. Just raise your hand if you wanted to ask Kelly anything, or if you had a show idea, you could pitch me. No, don't do that.